Want to build a thriving business while making a much bigger impact in the world by becoming known as an influential voice in your industry? The choice versus just a choice with your ideal client? That's exactly what you're going to learn as I interview business experts, industry thought leaders, and entrepreneurs who are in the trenches making their mark so you can too. This is the award-winning podcast, The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, and I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. So welcome to another episode. Joining me on today's show is Anne Williams-Diaz. And she is a leadership coach. She is a HR strategist and transformation expert with over 3 decades of experience in people development, risk management, and culture transformation. She's the founder of WithAWill, and she empowers individuals and organizations to build resilient human capital, navigate change with confidence, and create lasting legacies. Now, on today's show, Anne is going to share strategic growth mindset, how to set up our business and career with clarity, resilience, and purpose. She's going to talk about leadership and influence, the key principles to lead with impact, to build trust and drive meaningful change, as well as overcoming barriers to success, some practical insights on navigating risk and breaking through limitations. Welcome to the show, Anne.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for having me here. Absolutely
Oh,
excited to be here.
you are so welcome. I look forward to being able to tap into the wisdom and knowledge that you have gained over the 3 decades of working in people development, risk management, and culture transformation, as we mentioned in the introduction. So, as businesses, when we think about strategic growth mindset, how do we set up our business, our career with clarity, resilience, and purpose? What are some insights that you can share here, Anne?
So I think this whole, the whole concept of starting your business is exciting, being your own boss, doing things the way you want to. And with me, similar to a lot of other people, having spent 3 decades in the corporate, you start to question yourself to say, what is the purpose, right? But when you do step into, setting up your own business, I think the first very important thing is why. A lot of times we are excited about a lot, many things that we can really do, but there is no clarity on what we want to really achieve. Who is it going to be targeted to? What is it going to involve? I think in my journey, this is the third time I made this attempt to say I need to step out. On the previous 2 occasions, I thought I would do stuff, but the purpose was not very strong. And this time around, when I decided, I was very clear. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew why I was getting into it. I knew who I was going to target, right? So I think that the purpose was so strong that everything else seemed to fall in place. And again, it wasn't an overnight decision. When I went back to people I consider as mentors, I had conversations, and I was surprised, the amount of confidence that they displayed when they said, yes, you must go in, go ahead, you're very strong. And I didn't realize I was that strong. I didn't realize people thought I was that strong. So yeah, so I think the first step is the why. And because I think the conviction in which I could talk about what I wanted to achieve kind of gave everybody the sense of belief that yes, you can go ahead. So yeah, so I think the first step is the why. And the minute you're very sure about the why, like for me, it was about I had experienced as a woman in my entire 3 decades of journey. There were a lot of things that I experienced. I wished for having had a mentor through my entire journey. And, there were a few people, but I would have liked for more. And I think my entire transition would have been far much smoother. And I wanted to step out and be this mentor, be the coach for women. So my primary objective when I stepped out is to look at women development.
Beautiful.
And that, yeah, and
Yeah.
that was a very strong drive.
Yeah, beautiful. And so when we think of businesses then and organizations, because we know that you work as an HR strategist and leadership coach, how important is it? I'm sure it is very important that all businesses know their why, their purpose, And so share a little bit about some of the things that perhaps in your experience that you've seen with clients or organizations that are not clear on their purpose. What are some of the things that may be happening that would be an indication for them, and maybe we need to take a step back and get the clarity around our purpose, our why, so that we can have a more strategic growth mindset? What are some things that may be happening in that organization?
Yes, so that's so true. I think when I look back in some of the conversations that I'm having with my clients now, one thing that does come in my way is this ability to make decisions. When I look back at how operated, I was quick to make decisions. Quick to be able to identify, the gaps. Businesses do get challenged because they're so overwhelmed with so much that's happening that it becomes difficult for them to identify, to say what is the root cause. But then they also don't have the time and the bandwidth to go deep down into it. So what we do is when we talk to our clients, we structure it such that we've got a theme, we've got a model. And of course, thanks to a lot of what we've learned through the CBF program, the first round of the program for India, is we've designed a framework. So for example, what we do is we focus on people, process, and profitability. And we've broken down everything that comes into an organization in these three pillars. And when we talk to the clients, we say if you focus on your people, if you focus on your process, you will get your profitability, right? And that's the framework, that's the signature system that we follow. Now, when we start to break this down for people, for our clients, that's when they start to really go back and question to themselves: is our people, is the focus on people a challenge for us, or is the focus on the process the challenge for us? You simplify it for the client so that they are able to see these insights. You are required to ask the right questions. And I think a lot of my learning as a coach also plays into my conversations with clients when I'm looking at my HR advisory services, or when I'm talking to coaching clients. You're breaking it down for them to say where really lies the problem, is what helps them be able to take those decisions.
Yeah, because you said something, and I think it's key for all of us to be mindful of, is that often we are so overwhelmed because of the many decisions, the choices, the opportunities, but the clarity around, well, what is your why? What is your purpose? You are then able to focus and be far more intentional in the things that you know work. And I love the model that you shared: people, process, and profitability. Because so often businesses, we're always looking, or we tend to gravitate towards profitability, don't we? But as you
Absolutely.
say, if you're not looking after your people, and if there's gaps there, if your people are unhappy, or if you've got the wrong processes, it doesn't matter how hard you work in the area of profitability, there are things that are going to fall through the cracks. So, when you're talking then about resilience, let's talk about resilience. Businesses need to be far more resilient. So do we as individuals, because there is so much change in the marketplace, in our businesses. How are you finding, maybe even with the clients that you work for, how are you finding people are they more resilient now when change happens, or are we still aversive towards change? What are you seeing?
So I think it's a mix. It's of course very specific to individuals. And I think decisions get guided by how individuals operate. But largely, change has always been a problem. The acceptance to change has always been very difficult. And when I talk to my clients, or the first set of questions are always, why should we do it? Why should we go through the entire process? Isn't it can we not just fix something? There's always this whole concept to say, can we do short-term fixes? Because that's easy to implement. But I always have had this debate to say, if you don't look at it from a future perspective, you're just plugging holes right now. The journey of change is always difficult, right? But if you were to think through if you were to look at it from a forward perspective, then it starts to fall into place. And that's what I try to do with my clients, and for myself also. And um, there will always be, even if you have a great project plan, there will always be something which will fall. Even when I started this journey, my first year itself, I had two personal losses, right? Um, it derailed me. I did have to step back and give myself time to say I need to grieve, right? So things that I had planned for my first year didn't really happen. But then I said that, okay, it's fine. The next year, then we started to catch up quickly and say, what did we lose? Where did we lose ground, right? And what more can we do? So you come back with far more energy and far more enthusiasm around it. And I think that's the conversations that I keep having with my clients is to say, be prepared for the fact that you might have surprises. Be prepared for the fact that you might fail, and it is okay. As
Mm.
long as and the beauty of it is that every time you fail, there's always something that you gather. You really learn something out of it. So if you start with that mindset, then the failures, the challenges, they're like cakewalk.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach, Anne. So, talking about leadership and influence, you want to share some key principles that will enable us to lead with impact, build trust, while also drive meaningful change. And I would imagine that's for ourselves, but also those of us who are leading teams and organizations. Some of these key principles will help. So, what are some of the principles you want to share today?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is when I started off my business. I started with this approach to say this is something new for me, right? And even though I had decades of experience, it was a different, I was on the other side of the table now. So for me, every decision that I was making, every action that I was taking had to be looked at from a different perspective. And what I did, however, do was reflect back to say if I'm talking to somebody who's been and be having been on the other side, what did I expect, right?
Mhm.
And I think the first thing that I expected was credibility, right? And therefore, I did equip myself with the credentials that were required for me to be able to position myself. For example, if I'm being a coach, I needed to be a certified coach. It didn't matter that I had been coaching for whatever decades, but the fact is that the credentials brought credibility and brought trust, right? So the credibility was the first thing. Trust is the second aspect. For me, it was great because of having worked on both sides of the table. When I position conversations, it is focused on how do you lay the trust in the process for the client,
Mhm.
right? The comfort comes in when you say, I know I've done that, I've been there, I've seen it, right? That's when they start to, kind of connect with you to say that, okay, when you're making a suggestion, when you're stating a certain direction, it has a value, it has an experience to it. But there might also be situations where I have had no experience. I'm now talking, I've been a BFSI professional, a banking and financial services professional. I don't have knowledge of the other industries. But conceptually, people operate similarly, right? So
Mhm.
you have to be able to find those connections. You need to know about the industry. I can't walk into a conversation without having done any background. So
Yes.
you need to know, you need to be able to go with that information, uh, related to what they are going to be talking about, and then bring in your knowledge. Often we start with this whole perception to say, I know it all.
Yeah.
You can never know it all. And the last thing is, I think, is being candid. I mean, I have said I don't know it. I'm happy to ask questions. I'm happy to get feedback. So I think the three principles is the credibility, the trust, and being candid.
Yes. Would you say that candidacy, or let's talk about all of three of those, when you work with clients and even individuals, if you're coaching individuals, when either of those three are not, maybe we call them core values, or they're not working with either of those three as core principles, that some of the things, some of the goals that they're looking for or wanting to achieve are not there because one or more of those three are not being lived out. Do you find that that's common, that either one of those things, the credibility isn't there, the trust isn't there, the candor's not there, that one or more of those is not important to them? Do you find others, it's as important for others as it has been for you? I guess that's my question.
So yeah, I mean, value systems differ, right? So
Mm,
uh, th- s- especially being candid, some people don't think that they look at it from a different approach.
yes.
While I feel that it's important to say it as it is, yeah, there may be somebody else who might probably think twice about how they lay the conversation, and which is fair. And I think what I would like to do is in terms of my own approach. I mean, I don't believe that I need to go and change people.
Mm,
You do try to drive a certain value system, but you also need to appreciate that people come with their own value system.
yeah.
As long as there is no conflict, so I wouldn't engage with somebody where I see that there's a very strong conflict of the value system. But again, the fact that I'm very resilient, it usually plays into say that, is there something that I can do for this client or with this individual before I take the call to say that, listen, I don't think I want to partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fair to say that, if there is a clash in value system, which is really, really strong,
Yeah.
and that's a good point of time to step back and say that this perhaps is not something that I want to get into.
Mm. I'm glad I asked that question, even though it took a little bit of time to get out of my mouth. The reason being is that, we're talking about leadership and influence. And I think if we talk about candor, I mean, there is a way in which we approach and how we deliver that. But I guess as leaders, and whether you're working it with an individual or working with a group of people within an organization, as that coach, as that leadership expert, the transformation expert, if you've identified something in the organization that could, should they change, they could have vastly different results to the goal that they're achieving. You not saying something to them is not only going to stop them from achieving that goal. I mean, you as a coach would say that. So I guess what I'm saying is that when we're talking about leadership and influence, one way that we can do so positively is to be able to address things as they are and to be able to
Yes,
be open to
absolutely.
have that conversation. Yes.
Absolutely. Because like I said, when you do that, you build trust,
Mm,
right? And if you aren't able to gather the trust, there's not too far that you'll be able to progress it anyway. You
yeah.
won't get the respect, people will not, want to follow you. And as a leader, you want to be able to, um, have people be with you, not just because of the title that you carry, but because of the value that you bring to them.
Yeah, so true, so true. And I love also what you've mentioned that they are your core values. And I think when we live and breathe, we be our core values and in all of our interactions, we align that with the importance of why and purpose, which you've said in the first key area of strategic growth mindset that is so important for you. You start to build a reputation of that credible person who can be trusted in the work that you do. Even though some of the things you may bring up, initially it might be, oh, we thought we were doing that well, but maybe we can do it a better way. I think there gains a certain respect of your knowledge and expertise. And I love that. And that's who you are, and you bring that forward in the work that you do. And I hope that others who are listening, that is a wonderful role model for others because there's a core value and insights that you can share that is going to provide wonderful, insights and the answer, the solution for the company or for the individual. So trust that they'll bring that forward. I love that. So let's talk about overcoming barriers to success. You've got some practical insights on how we can navigate risk and break through limitations. I can't wait to hear these. What are some of these practical insights?
Yeah. So the first barrier for me came with the fact that uh, there were two thoughts that played to me on my mind. One, like I said before, I'm starting a new journey. I don't know any of it, right? And then at some days I would play this mindset to say, listen, I've had so many decades of experience. How can you question the value that I bring? And that continued to be a challenge for a very long time till I learned how to blend both. I accepted the fact that there are some things that I don't know, but there is a lot of what I do know, and I will be able to. How do I then marry both to show the value? Um, I remember my initial calls, people telling me and saying, "Oh, I've just started this off," and they would say, "Oh, you just started it off? Okay, fine. Let us come back to you." Uh, but yeah, I kind of refined this over the way. And yes, I mean, I think it's also important to not start with the conversation to say, listen, here I'm a heavyweight with 3 decades of experience. I know it all and I'm going to teach you. Right. So that approach also had to change. Um, I also had challenges with, the conversations that I was having with clients. Like I said before, decision making. I was quick to make decisions. And here there were clients who were struggling. I remember with one client, I actually thought, I don't think this is the person I want to work with.
Mm.
And I went back to my mentor and she said, like, you'll find more of these everywhere. You can't run away from this. And I told her that, listen, I wanted to be my own boss because I wanted to have the choice of who I work with. Right. And then she said, but then this is a good opportunity for you. If you want to start with bringing change, then you're running away from your first opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I we did go back to this client and I did try to, and the minute I absorbed this learning, I think I my conversation, the quality of my conversations changed. We're doing more work with them now. So they've come back, they want to do something different. So I think the first barrier, of course, is you yourself
Yeah.
and your own mindset, right?
Mm.
And that's the biggest journey to take. Everything else you find ways to it quicker because you see it from an outside perspective. But what's inside you is something very difficult to accept.
Mm.
And then there will be things, there will be proposals that you will make. People, it's very difficult to understand the client from the other side of the table. I've For me, the organization that I was working with, I'd been with them for long duration. So I kind of lived and was breathing that organization. So I knew what I wanted. But here it's a completely different environment, right? So there is a lot of the lot of background that I had to you do for myself. There's a lot of information that you need to gather. Uh, and you have to go prepared to the meeting knowing that there will be a question that will come in that you don't have an answer to.
Yes.
And that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to, you don't need to necessarily create an impression by answering all the questions. You need to be able to know which ones are the important one to respond to,
Yeah.
and that's the impact that you need to make. And I think so those are that's in my mind, it comes with each meeting. With every meeting, I start to get better.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful. And I love the examples that you shared because I'm sure so many of us can relate to that. And so often it is the mindset and the things that we think, the conversations that we have, which often are untrue, that can keep us stuck. And isn't it wonderful that you had mentors and people around you that could support you, and it's turned into a customer who's now come back. We talked earlier on and in our interview about the importance of understanding our why, importance in understanding our purpose. One thing I'd love to talk about, and it was in your introduction, was how you love to help individuals and organizations create lasting legacies. Obviously, legacies is important to you, but an organization who may not even have considered, or even an individual who has not even considered, maybe we can create legacy. We'd not really even thought about that. I'd love you to share, why do you think it's so important that we do create lasting legacies?
So when I bought that in even in my even in the company tagline, and I say empower people, create lasting legacies. Um, it started with a personal experience where where I lost somebody and I realized that once the person is gone, everybody seems to forget. And I told myself I don't want that. If even after I'm gone, I want people to remember me for what I have done or what I've left back. Right? And that's the purpose I started. It's very aspirational,
Mm.
right? But the way I looked at it, if I don't think big, I'm never going to aim to do that. And I think I bring that in the conversations. Uh, the ability to think forward, the ability to think to say what we are doing today, how can it impact the future? Because if you don't think 2 steps ahead, then you're only solving for an issue today, right? And you don't, the entire environment is changing, the market is changing, the competition is changing, your employee mindset is changing, generations are changing, right? So if you don't think forward, then you will lose out in the race. And that's the conversation that I would position with everybody. It's not, it's about, yes, for yourself creating a sense of purpose to say that people do, and I see it also in the organizations that I've worked with. So when I look back in my organizations, there are a lot of processes, there's a lot of policy, there's a lot of method that is still being followed, designs, formats that I create. And it brings a lot of sense of pride when I look back at it.
Mm.
Sometimes I've forgotten that, I built something and, people are talking about it. So yeah, I think the whole idea when I say legacies is around uh, thinking for the future, not only living in the moment, uh, not getting carried away for sure, but also being able to look at it 2 steps ahead, because that prepares you better. It
Mm.
also prepares you for some of the challenges that you can't see today, but might come into the future. And it could be anything, like I said, from the market to the environment to the people to the process, all of it put together just makes you better prepared.
Yeah. Also, too, as you're sharing that, when an organization or an individual is not only, as you said, aligned with their why and their purpose, however, they're looking at it from creating a legacy and an impact, the way in which you approach things is a lot different too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It seems
Yes.
bigger. It seems, as you said, greater. And I think it allows you to leave a greater impact in the people that you serve and support. And I think that would show to the individuals or the organizations that you work with and that come into contact with you, because you are leaving every interaction. What can we leave? A legacy there. What can we do to really impact that individual or persons? That it's not just a one-off experience. They remember us. It's different, isn't it?
Absolutely. And for me, everything falls into a funnel. You see, if I'm talking about the impact for the future, then how credible am I today? Am I building the trust? Am I being resilient in my approach? It all falls into saying that, the future is the value that I'm carrying today.
Mm. I love that. I've loved our conversation too. And I could really just sense from the way in which you're speaking and sharing that you just exude all of the things that you say you stand for. So, what a thrill it's been for you to join us today. So, if people are listening, individuals or organizations, and they'd love to connect with you and find out more about your programs, I know that you mentioned your signature system already and the process that you work people through. How can they connect with you? What's the best way, Anne?
So I'd welcome people to go to my website. It's uh, WithAWill.in. It's a simple website, so you can connect there. We also have a Facebook page called With a Will HR Consultancy, and we have an Instagram page, With a Will HR Consultancy Services. Feel free to connect with us on any of these platforms.
Oh, wonderful. Just before we leave today's interview, Anne, I think all of the things that you spoke about for especially organizations, but then individuals working within organizations, we mentioned there's a lot of change happening in the marketplace. There's a lot of competition now, but for the organizations who are clear and have individuals who are clear on their purpose and their why, who have a clear legacy in which they want to create, and they bring that forward in everything they do, they will be the market leaders, won't they? Because they're the ones that are going to impact their customers, repeat customers, and so on. So I think it's all organizations and individuals need to think about that, don't they? How can we create a lasting legacy so that
Absolutely.
everybody we come into contact with, whether they're using our products or services, we've left a legacy, our legacy on them, and have made an impact. So
Yes.
thank you for the work that you continue to do to help organizations and individuals create their lasting legacies.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie, for having me. And I hope, this conversation helps a lot of people.
Hey, it's Anne-Marie. Before I go, are you a coach or a consultant who feels like the world's best kept secret? Your experience is vast, yet secretly you're frustrated because despite all of your hard work, you're just not getting the visibility, leads, or new clients you'd hope for, and you don't know why? I've created free training and resources that'll help you build visibility, generate leads, and enroll dream clients with ease because you're seen as a trusted authority, even in a crowded marketplace. And you've positioned yourself as the choice versus just a choice with your unique, uncopyable, and unforgettable brand and message. And you're able to nurture listeners into leads from your podcast, even from your first episode. To access these free resources, go to ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/community. That's ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/community.